One of the things that I see so much with my coaching clients is the FA who ends up with the DA. So the fearful avoidant who ends up with the dismissive avoidant. And that's really wild because they are pretty much complete opposites. So how does this happen? Leslie Wells, connection coach here. I help individuals grow, heal, thrive, repair in their romantic relationships by looking at things through an attachment lens. If you are unfamiliar with the dismissive avoidant and a fearful avoidant, please go back and look at some of my other videos because it will make this make so much more sense. As I said, the fearful avoidant and the dismissive avoidant are pretty much complete opposites. The fearful avoidant's needs are to really be seen, heard, and understood, and to be known at a very deep level, to the point where they almost sort of expect you to read their mind, inherently know what they need. They are very hyper-vigilant because they grew up in chaotic households, so they had to be in order to stay safe and protect themselves. So because of this hyper-vigilance, they really put their partner under a microscope, and they're able to sense any shifts in mannerisms, tone, behavior, anything that's going on. They're very well aware of it. And again, they do that because it keeps them safe, because if you are aware of what's coming around the corner and you're prepared for it, somehow subconsciously that makes you feel like you're able to handle it and you're better equipped to handle it. So they really, because they're so hyper vigilant and always aware of what's going on with their partner, they sort of expect their partner to be able to do the same thing and almost mind read in that way. However, on the good side, they are also able to really show up in empathy. So fearful avoidants are very deep feelers. And again, they notice all the things about their partner, not just the bad things, but the good things. So they know what their partner likes, what they desire, what's important to them. They pay attention to those things, and they very much expect their partner to be the same in return. The other really strong need of the fearful avoidant is safety and feeling safe. And one of the ways that they get that in a relationship is by feeling very connected and feeling like things are at a very deep level. So they like lots of deep conversations. They really want their partner to be open and vulnerable the way that they are. They really want to get to know their partner and be very close in that way, because that builds safety and trust for them. So for the fearful avoidant, they come with a lot of drama because they are such deep feelers. They really bring up a lot of things, even the small things, and they don't tend to overlook a lot of things. So they have this sort of sense of drama. Their trauma response is very often a fight response. So they get loud, big, they use a lot of protest behaviors, they can lash out, they can say ugly things. They can really turn up conflict. So that's one of the things with the fearful avoidant as well, is that they really have that sort of big fight response is what they typically will go into. They don't shy away from conflict. They will lean into conflict. They will actually bring up a conflict, nitpick, or bring up a fight as a protest behavior in order to connect when they're feeling disconnected. So the triggers for the fearful avoidant are that disconnect, feeling unsafe, whenever your words and actions don't align, and very little betrayals can feel like very big betrayals to them. Some other things that really upset the fearful avoidant are feeling misunderstood. Again, they sort of expect you to be aware of all these emotional cues. They have a really high emotional IQ, and they expect you to have the same. So whenever they feel misunderstood or feel like you're not seeing them in their pain and you're not holding space for their pain or validating their emotional experience, they can get really upset and go into that fight response. Our dismissive avoidant is very, very different. Our dismissive avoidant does not really desire that closeness. That's one of their triggers for them, is they really fear losing their autonomy and their space in the relationship. They're afraid of getting so enmeshed in the relationship that they lose their sense of self. So whereas the fearful avoidant really wants to connect on a very deep level, the dismissive avoidant prefers to keep things at a very easy, carefree, superficial level. And there's a couple of reasons for that. They know they're not good in conflict because they emotionally suppress. So whereas the fearful avoidant is really big in their feelings, the dismissive avoidant suppresses their feelings. So they're completely opposite there. But because they suppress their feelings, they're not comfortable with feelings, theirs or their partner's. So whereas the fearful avoidant really wants vulnerability to feel safe and to establish that connection that makes them feel like you're trustworthy, the dismissive avoidant very much has a very hard time being vulnerable, and that's a trigger for them. And that's because they carry this inner defectiveness wound. They inherently feel like they are broken and something is wrong with them. So where the fearful avoidant truly wants to be seen deeply, the fearful avoidant is the opposite. They do not want to be seen deeply. Where the fearful avoidant will lean into conflict, will often start conflict, will get very big in conflict in that trauma response, a fight response. The dismissive avoidant, one of their biggest needs is peace and harmony. So they very much like pull away from that. They're the complete opposite in that way. Where the fearful avoidant holds a lot of space for empathy for others and is very hyper vigilant, the dismissive avoidant grew up in a home where there was no emotion shown. And so they have zero emotional intelligence or emotional attunement. So they don't have the neural connections or the makeup to actually show up for the fearful avoidant in that way. They're emotionally blind, so they don't notice things about their partner, where the fearful avoidant will notice all those changes in tone, behavior, like mannerisms, schedules. The DA notices none of that stuff. So while the fearful avoidant really needs to be seen, they're not going to get that for the dismissive avoidant. And where they really need to feel connected, to feel safe, the dismissive avoidant feels safer with a large amount of space and autonomy in the relationship. So they pull away a lot, and the fearful avoidant will chase a lot. So they're completely always on the opposite page here. Then how in the world do these two even end up together? Well, here's the thing. In the beginning, we all show up differently in relationships because we're really not sharing all of ourselves right away in a healthy way if we're just starting to date. Particularly the dismissive avoidant, who in the beginning, it's really easy for them to show up with some level of transparency. There's not going to be a lot of conflict in the beginning. There's not going to be too much intimacy. It's going to be in that phase of getting to know one another. So it's going to be a little bit superficial and fun and carefree and light. And there's not going to be as heavily, deeply invested feelings. And because they haven't been together long, there's not going to be the hurts, the pains that come with being in a relationship for a long time that maybe haven't been worked out that lead to that conflict. And so all of the things that trigger a dismissive avoidant into their trauma response and create the perfect atmosphere where they tend to shut down, withdraw, and pull away aren't there yet, because those things are that closeness, that intimacy, the having expectations, the commitment, the being in that place where you really are expected to show up with transparency and vulnerability, and there is conflict that comes up. Those are the things that trigger the dismissive avoidant. So in the beginning of a relationship, they aren't there yet. What happens in the beginning of a relationship where we're first starting to date somebody else is we're looking through things, we're sort of seeking out the things that we want from our shadow self. So if you aren't familiar with what your shadow is, that's the pieces of you that are subconscious, that you sort of know there's something that needs to be worked on there, are the pieces that maybe the parts of you that maybe you're ashamed of. Typically, if we're familiar with our shadow, we know where we need the work. So there may be the inadequacies or the deficiencies within ourselves where we need to grow and improve and heal, that we then see in other people, and we desire that for ourselves because we know we're not getting that internally. So for the fearful avoidant, whenever they see the dismissive avoidant in the beginning of a relationship, they are very much attracted to the things that they don't have internally, that shadow self. And so they're attracted to the fact that they can be stoic and they can be calm. They don't get riled up and all in their feelings like the fearful avoidant does. Initially, that feels like a safe place for them with the dismissive avoidant. And that feels like sort of the DA is their rock. They're someone who's calm in a storm and they don't get all upset. And they can actually like hear somebody say something negative and they don't care so much. They're not worried about earning approval. It comes across as this level of like high confidence and self-assurance to the fearful avoidant, who constantly feels like they a lot of times are abandoning their own needs, or they're trying to earn approval, or they do worry about what other people think. They also in the beginning do feel seen and heard because the dismissive avoidant hasn't been triggered yet, so they're able to show up in that way for them. They also are really attracted to the dismissive avoidant's ability to chase their own hobbies and have their own friends and sort of make a life for themselves and really hold on to their autonomy and that independence, because a lot of times the fearful avoidant sort of throws themselves to the back of the bus in order to meet the needs of other people. And so they really like that within the dismissive avoidant. And again, these are all things that they don't have internally within themselves. And so they're attracted to them within the partner that they are starting to date. So the dismissive avoidant, what do they see in the fearful avoidant? What does that shadow look like for them? That looks like someone who they're really attracted to their empathy and their warmth and their ability to be comfortable in their feelings and share about these things openly. Initially, they're very attracted to that. Now, later on, that triggers them because they realize their inadequacy, and there starts to be that level of commitment and expectation, and the expectation for them to be intimate and vulnerable and show up in that way. And that's when they start to back off. But initially, they like that about their partner. They like the fact that their partner is so emotionally attuned to them because they've never had that in their past. So it feels good at first for somebody to be really emotionally aware of what they need and be able to show up in that way for them and be willing to take the time to ask what's going on for them emotionally and be aware of those things for them. So in the beginning, they both see a lot of things that they like in one another and that they ultimately really, truly desire within themselves. If you aren't already following me on some of my social media platforms, check me out there. Who knows what's going to happen with this TikTok ban? I'm also on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and I do one-on-one coaching. You can find me and book coaching by going to my website, www.lesliewellsconnectioncoach.com.